You're listening to the Jōrni Podcast. Yoga for your joints? Yep, that's not a typo. In today's episode, we explore a radically different approach to movement, aging, and mobility for life. Hi, I'm Petra Brunbauer, and with decades of experience with sadness, pain, anxiety, and stress, I finally figured out how to leave all that behind. And this podcast shows you how to break free permanently so you can reclaim your sanity and find the self-esteem and energy to go after the life you desire. With real talk about mental health, holistic healing, and the tough journey of coming out the other end. This is the Jōrni Podcast. Welcome to today's episode. In this episode, we explore the transformative power of yoga for lifelong mobility and joint health. Our guest shares his unique approach developed over decades of teaching and personal experience that offers hope beyond conventional fitness methods, emphasizing joint care and healing movement at any age. Jeff Bailey's life has centered around yoga since his first experience with the practice in 1985. He has taught over 13,000 classes and workshops, owns studios, and is the founder of Avita Yoga. Jeff is an expert at restoring joint health. He has helped thousands overcome pain and return to their favorite activities. Working with Jeff, many have avoided joint replacements because of his time-tested method for cleansing and remodeling joints, as well as strengthening bones. In an era where muscles and extreme fitness have taken center stage, Jeff brings a revolutionary approach to health that addresses the root problems: arthritis, degeneration, and limited mobility. At age 50, Jeff incurred a high-speed ski accident that severely damaged his hip. The turning point came when he realized joints crave compression. Jeff is a trained rolfer, has appeared on numerous podcasts, and runs the annual Avita Yoga teacher training. He leads international retreats and workshops and has authored The Yoga Mind and his upcoming book, Mobility for Life. Jeff has dedicated his life to helping people live happy, mobile, and independent lives. Now in his 60s, he and countless others are living proof that Avita works. His practical approach to yoga helps restore joint health and maintain mobility for life. Here is my interview with Jeff Bailey. Hi, Jeff. It's so great to have you on the podcast today. I've been looking forward to getting to chat with you because mobility for life is a very interesting topic, and I can't wait for you to actually take us into that a little bit and explain what we'll be talking about today. Welcome to the podcast.
Oh, thank you, Petra. Thanks so much for having me here.
Yeah, it's my absolute pleasure. And of course, I'm very curious what path you will be taking us down today. So share a little bit about yourself and maybe the pieces of your story or your journey that brought you to what you're doing today. And maybe give our listeners a bit of insight about what it is that you do today.
Yeah, thank you for that opportunity. I think at some point we all can look back on our lives and see how, if we're really open-hearted about it, we can see how everything in our life worked just right. It worked perfectly to bring us to this present moment. Everything starts to line up. My childhood was very rich in Gunnison, Colorado. It's a rural town. My dad was a veterinarian. I had my hands in everything. We had a small ranch. We fed cows. I milked a cow in the morning. And when I'd go on calls with my dad, he would quiz me on the way back from the call. And he would quiz me on the parts of the body and physiology and how it worked and everything. And I really enjoyed learning about the body. And I learned a lot at a very young age. And I was going to go into medicine. And then by the time I got out of high school at age 18, I was ready to do something different. And in college, I discovered yoga. This was in about 1985 or so. And it just caught me. It just puts wind in my sails. And the thing about yoga, there was two things. It definitely opened my body up. It opened my heart up. I felt fantastic because of the class I did. But I turned to the teacher and I said, "What is yoga?" I'd never even heard the word before. And he said, "Yoga means to join." And it didn't align with what we were doing in the room. But I stayed with the yoga, and that question became a mantra. What does it mean to join? And It's the best question I ever asked because that's what just took me inward. We were just talking about that inscription, your logo, and how it represents the journey, which is always circuitous and circular, but healing and joining is not a linear process. And when we open up to that kind of unwinding and let it take us wherever we're meant to go, good things just happen. And that's how years of insights got me to this super helpful form of yoga called Avita.
Oh, thank you for sharing that. And you know what? I find this so great to hear that you actually found your passion fairly early on in life. I know there's some people that spend a lifelong journey, never connect to anything in the kind of way that you have. That is wonderful to hear that you found yoga and it inspired you and it vitalized you and energized you. Tell us a little bit about Avita Yoga because a lot of listeners might generally know what yoga is. They see posts on Instagram and people posing in front of all these impressive landscapes. But what have you discovered on this journey that you have been on? What is yoga for you? What did you find? And what is Avita Yoga? And what does that mean to you?
Okay. Wow. Yeah, lots of good questions there. First, I'd like to clarify that while I speak like I found my passion found me, but it took me all through my 20s and into my 30s to really let go and let yoga be my path because it was unconventional. And I had a lot of judgment, a lot of self judgment around it, saying, no, you got to make money, you got to go do conventional things. And when I did that, the universe just pushed me back in the other direction because it didn't work. And so when I finally let go and just followed whatever it was that I was moved to, or whatever we're moved to, that's what matters. For me, it was yoga. For somebody else, it could be dentistry. Okay. So Avita is a practice for the bones and for the joints. It's where the problems are. And as a kid, I just saw the effects of time and gravity working negatively on all the grown-ups in my life, including my parents, my aunts, my uncles. And I just wanted a better way. And that's what popped yoga into my life. And then my early understanding of physiology in the body made me really question what it is we're doing. I really don't believe that muscles are designed to stretch. They can release and let go, but actually trying to stretch a muscle is comes with risk. And I think it's why a lot of people don't like to do yoga. It just doesn't match with their body. Avita, we target the bones and the joints. And when we don't try to stretch, but instead go for mobility, it's the difference between flexibility and mobility, a topic that I cover in my book, Mobility for Life. We get amazing results because we work with the connective tissue around the joint that starts to release. We actually can begin to remodel the interior of the joint with a little time and pressure. It's nature's way of keeping our joints healthy and clean. And it's really an untapped idea or resource that really seems to works well for me and many of my practitioners. I know you had some other questions in there, so maybe I should let you come back to some of your questions.
Actually, listening to you, I'm fascinated because what you're saying goes against many of the things that we hear about yoga, where do this pose, breathe into it so you can lengthen some more, so you can stretch some more. So, what you're saying actually goes completely against that. And I love it because you're making so much sense. Because I feel it a lot of the times when I'm stretching, it doesn't feel very good. When you say that, something in me actually goes, that makes a lot of sense what Jeff is saying. So tell us a little bit about what you mean by nature's way of working with the bones and the joints. What does that have to do with yoga, and how are you actually combining those two things?
Yeah, beautiful. You ever driven through the countryside and seen cows and horses lying in the pasture? If you really stop and think about it, how is it that they sit there, lie there, they shift positions there, they spend a lot of time in relaxed positions, often with their hooves and everything curled under. If you look at your dog and your cat, the way they lounge around, and if you really look at it carefully, you'll see the way this pressure is coming into their bones and joints. And when we do that, instead of trying to stretch a muscle or strengthen a muscle, or as you said earlier, try to look pretty and fancy in an elegant beach setting, trying to get better at a pose, it's the wrong goal. I don't want to get better at the pose. I want to have success with no pain reaching up onto the top shelf. I want to be able to sit down, tie my shoes myself, get dressed, have independence, and move comfortably in my life for a lifetime. That's the goal. And that long-term goal is radically different than trying to better a pose in the here and now. So we take this idea, and I've done all the research, which is also in the book, that supports this idea about the pressure on bones and the joints. It's very cleansing. The pressure moves the toxins that are generated inside the joint just through the metabolic process. It moves the toxins through the synovial membrane where they're cleansed and picked up by the venous system and the lymphatic system. And then brand new clean fluid is produced when there's a void detected inside the joint. So we keep the interior nice and healthy and clean. It's part of nature's way of cleansing the inside of our joints. And if we don't just have these shapes, like sitting in a chair and going for a walk is not enough. You've got to expose the joints to all their other possibilities, put a little time and pressure into them. And that's when we just get these phenomenal results. And we don't try to strengthen or stretch the muscles in any way, although we might feel a little stretchy sensation here and there. And that's how it works. So instead of going for a stretch or going for a pose, we go for what I call healing sensation. It's pleasant. It leads us into the parts of the body that need the attention, and it really induces a peaceful state of mind. It's pretty sweet. I'm convinced those cows and horses out there are in peaceful, healthy, healing sensation, and that's why they can sit there relaxed all day.
I love it. And I'm thinking of my cat, who's no longer in this plane, but he always had his paws tucked in, tucked under, and I felt that he was pretty happy. So there's something to be said for that. And I think some of the research also I know from chiropractic, because the movements that they do changes the synovial fluid that's in the joints and renews it. So I definitely have heard also of some of the science behind what you're explaining. So I find this very fascinating. How does this work, Jeff, for people who come to this maybe later in life and they have some hip issues or they have some knee issues where they feel they can't kneel or they can't be in certain positions? Can they still work with their joints in the way that you're describing? And how would you start someone off the healing path if they're already having some of these issues?
Yeah, excellent question. We have to find an entry point into the problem. Let's just say there's a knee issue and they're having trouble kneeling. The pain and the notion that I have trouble kneeling will keep me from kneeling. Why would I want to go into the pain? When we let pain run our lives, or we simply try to get rid of the pain or numb it or avoid it, our lives just get narrower and narrower, and the problem increases, even if we take something that numbs the pain. I call that killing the messenger. Instead of killing the messenger, we start to welcome it and we listen to the pain and let it lead us to the problem. Knowing and trusting at first, and then later knowing that the pressure that we're introducing is helpful. Let's just say kneeling is out of the question for someone, and we need to bring the flexion into the knee. We have to get the flexion in there somehow, some way. So what's the safest way to do that? Lying on your back and bringing one knee at a time toward the shoulder. Sometimes we interlock the fingers behind the thigh. Sometimes we interlock the fingers over the knee. And we close our eyes, we support the head, and we slowly bring the knee in the direction of the shoulder. And if there's pain, we back up a little bit until we're sure that it's healing sensation. Maybe a little uncomfortable, but it's like there's a resonance that happens and you know it's safe and sound. And then we stay there. We close the eyes, we relax, we breathe through the nose. We stay for 1.5 to 2, sometimes even 3 minutes. That's how long it takes to really initiate this physiology. We do the other knee. We always just give the brain and the mind one thing at a time to work on. We keep it really simple. With practice, we start to bring in little bits of complexity and things like that, but the practice is always doable. And then with time, we might, for example, come to all fours and then slowly move in the direction of a squat. Now you have a little more weight, you got a little more pressure coming in, and it's just a gradual undoing bit by bit. And that's what we Avita Yoga teachers are trained to do. In the teacher training, we really learn how to find that entry point for each student and help them discern the difference between pain and healing sensation. The rest is just a willingness to trust the process and practice.
I believe you're right when you speak about pain narrowing our lives. And there's a certain fear once you feel pain or chronic pain that it happens every time you do something. And eventually you just don't do that anymore to avoid that sensation. So definitely I can see how that will narrow what you're willing to do in your life and the experiences and activities that you will participate in. So you touched on something really interesting before, and that is that part of Avita Yoga also is generating a sense of inner peace. I believe that if we are in pain or we are unwell or we're ill, it's very hard to have a sense of inner peace because there are things that are bothering us and making us unwell. How does the sense of inner peace tie into our well-being when it comes to Avita Yoga? Is that part of what you teach in your programs, or how do people find that inner peace? I feel like that's maybe a very elusive question, but
Oh, man.
how does that tie into Avita Yoga?
Yeah. We take this unique position. It's unique, but I believe it's true from my own experience as well as others. And that is the mind is already peaceful. There's a part of our mind that's already peaceful, happy, and whole. We covered up with notions of separation and pain and anxiety and loneliness and lack and all these things, fear, these things just, they blot it out. And we take this notion, and this comes back to the definition of yoga, which is to join. But how do we join? How do we join with that peaceful self, but undo the blockages to it? It's a timeless formula. Instead of seeking for love, for example, I undo the barriers that I've built against it. When we let yoga be an undoing instead of a doing and accomplishing, miracles happen left and right because the peaceful self wants to be known. I use the same formula in the practice. If it's a knee restriction, a shoulder restriction, a neck or low back restriction, I don't seek flexibility. I don't seek mobility. I seek and remove the barriers to the mobility. And then I automatically, my mind goes inward. I listen to the feedback. I'm automatically drawn to make an inquiry with myself. And that is the way to the peaceful self. It's what the Buddha taught. It's what all the saints and mystics suggested is get still, get calm, and find the way in. While we might, back to the knee, for example, while I might be simultaneously joining with the sensation in my knee, ensuring that it's safe and healing, I can spend time with it. Here's the test. Can I be peaceful? And if I'm aligned just right, to me, yogic alignment is when the sensation is moving me inside toward my peaceful self. That's the inner movement. And it's a journeyless journey, but it's the one we all do. We're on that path, whether we know it or not. And so the sooner we just embrace it and say, okay, let me play along with this and be part of the undoing, then the mobility increases and we get closer and closer to the peaceful self. And the judgments, the limitations that we've built up, we don't want them. We realize how limiting they were and we just give them up. Those are gifts to God or gifts to the universe because that's what lets the love come through. And it's always peaceful. And we can save a lot of time by just undoing the blockages to whatever it is we really want.
That's really interesting. Yeah. Thank you for sharing that part of it. I feel like that's a very individual journey as well for practitioners and for people working with you or teachers even
Very
to
personal.
find that individualized path for themselves. Yeah. And I think also, like we touched on this a little bit before, probably a lifelong journey of learning and listening to your body and self discovery, finding, like you said, these ways in until you find comfort in all of that. And you actually, I think, start craving and liking that inward reflection and that peace that comes from that. Because we tend to have busyness in our lives for the sake of busyness. So this is, I think, a very healing opposition to that is to come inward and find that peace. Yeah, that's really beautiful. And tell us a little bit about your book. You mentioned that it's called Mobility for Life. And what can our listeners expect if they were to pick up a copy? What can they find in your book?
Oh, yeah. Thank you. Yeah. The book is Mobility for Life. It was a passion project. There's about 5 years of writing and just a lot of love went into this book. I really enjoy the writing process. What could you find in this book but insights into the science and the physiology? I did the research. So it's in there, but it's in a lighthearted way. It's practical and applicable. Beyond that, for those that are wanting that sort of proof, it's in there. But all around that in the book is inspiration about really questioning some of the conventional ways that we've approached exercise and the conventional ways that we've even explored meditation and things like that. It's so different. Petra, what we've talked about, what I shared with you, it's so different, or it's such a different approach to yoga that I needed this book to really help people realize you don't have to sweat. You don't have to push and pull. You don't need those things. But when you really actually slow down and take a completely different approach to health, okay, this is in the book too. There's a difference between the pursuit of health and the pursuit of fitness. And there's a fitness craze and people that can be too fit and people that strive for fitness and get injured and get disenchanted. But when we slow down and just say, wait a minute, I want to be healthy. I want to be able to reach on the top shelf for the rest of my life. I want to enjoy a walk and be independent. I want to be happy. And now we're aligned with the loving laws of the universe, and we slip into that alignment, and health becomes very attractive and very attainable. There is this underlying idea in the book that less is more when we take the right approach.
I love that. And I think, especially as we grow older, we feel those things a lot differently because I think for me, it used to be about fitness and looking a certain way and being able to do a pose and make it look really great. And that has shifted into something entirely different. And as you said, you know what? I want to be able to kneel down when I'm older. I want to be able to still go for walks and not be confined to a wheelchair or a walker. Those are the things that I really appreciate now that I had not much appreciation for before, or even 20 years ago. So there's a shift in that mindset and coming into my body and really appreciating actually all these amazing things that I can do. And I wanted to keep doing those things as I grow older. So I love this philosophy behind your book and behind Avita Yoga because we don't realize how important this is until we lose it. Mostly, I think we realize when we have lost mobility, when we have an injury, when we're losing our health. That's usually when we start thinking, oh goodness, I wish I had done something differently because I actually really appreciate my health, but I just didn't know it. So I love the idea of doing Avita Yoga in preparation, in prevention, in health, and coming into alignment for all of that. So, yeah, thank you for writing a whole book about that. I know that takes a lot of dedication and effort and research. So, I feel that listeners are going to get so much value reading this and maybe finding their own path to their own health in that book.
Yes. Yeah, that's it. The book is an inspiration. There's lots of tools in there, but with the permission that we can give ourselves to really follow our heart and move in a joyous direction. No matter how hard you exercise, if it's not joyous and fun, it won't work. The book is lots of ways to trust and follow our hearts.
Yeah, that sounds beautiful and very empowering for readers. So, listeners, we're going to be linking to the book Mobility for Life in the show notes as well. If you want to pick up a copy, we'll make sure we connect you to that. And Jeff, maybe you can give us an idea as to what people can expect if they were to do an Avita Yoga class or an exercise or something from Avita Yoga. What would that look like? Can you take us through maybe one of your favorite things to do or something easy for people to start with if they've never done Avita Yoga before?
Yeah. Okay. It'd be great to demo it visually, but I'll try to describe some here. First, I would say the immediate expectation would be if the newcomers who come into a class, they find themselves in a position that's very doable. For example, here's one that I can describe quite easily. You lie on your back and you put your legs up on the wall, but you make sure that your rump is about 10 to 12, maybe 15 inches away from the wall. And that way the knees can extend. You put your head on a bolster or some sort of cushion, and you put your arms out in a T shape, and you close your eyes and you turn your head to one side. And you might increase the turn of your head and neck a little bit and just feel the resistance in your neck. Okay. There's vertebrae and many facets inside the cervical spine alone that want the pressure. They want the contact. We only give them a very small amount of that in any given day. And so we turn, we feel a little resistance. You feel the pressure change in your head a bit. You welcome that sensation, and then you just rest and you feel. Okay, that's the whole thing. It's a moving meditation in a way where instead of just sitting upright in one shape, we have lots of shapes, and we let the meditation of each shape come through, and we experience the feedback, which comes in the form of pressure with a little bit of time. And it gives the nervous system a chance to reorganize and unwind. Time generally flies by in a class, and students leave the class. And one of the prevailing comments that I hear when people leave a class is, wow, what did I just do? Because there are shapes and positions that they can do, but they've probably never done. And it just opens your heart and mind up. And it's because we give those various parts so much attention, the healing starts to get lit up, and they just feel better walking out of the class. And then you tend to want more. They're very popular classes. When I first started teaching in this way, my classes began filling up in Boulder, Colorado, and I just finally had to take it online. It's easy to like when it comes into your life at the right time. If you're too young and haven't had enough injuries, then it may not be the right time.
Yeah, you'll see me grinning along. I feel like many of us have had that same journey of not quite having the appreciation yet, but we're growing into it.
That's it. Like Mark Twain said, youth is wasted on the young.
Yes. Yeah, so true. Now, in addition to your book, what do you have available? You mentioned classes. Do people physically have to be where you are, or are you offering online classes? How can our listeners connect with you, Jeff, if they'd like to experience Avita Yoga for themselves?
Yeah, thank you for asking. The website is avitayogaonline.com. And I teach classes there. They can practice with me live online. But then I have replays, and I have a series of classes. So there's series 1, series 2, series 3. And most people like to practice on their own time, and they just start with series 1. And series 1, I explain all the basic concepts and an introduction to the basic shapes so that you can wrap your mind around this idea of working more directly with your bones and joints, because the muscles have just stolen the show. And so we put the muscles on the back burner, and you have to learn and dance into it slowly this way. Some of the classes are only 15 minutes long in series 1. And there's 14 classes in series 1. And so you go through them, and then you'll feel results and get a nice taste of what it's all about. And then you move into series 2, and It's not like they get harder. They get a little bit more complex, but still very doable. And the complexity just reaches deeper and deeper into the nervous system and unwinds the mind. And not only do you feel more mobile, but you start to feel happier and more peaceful. It just feels like your mind is really opening up too. And that's what yoga is supposed to do, in my opinion.
It's not about pretzeling yourself into anything. It's about unpretzeling yourself. Yeah. Wow. It sounds so empowering and so healing on many levels other than even just the physical level. And I could see how that would even affect, like you mentioned, your mood, your emotions, your mental state, all of it being affected in a positive way through Avita Yoga. So thank you so much for sharing all of that. And of course, we will be linking to your offerings in the show notes as well so that our listeners can connect with your book, that they can connect with your classes. And I do hope that our listeners are going to come and join you in some of your online classes and find out for themselves what some of these benefits are that you are talking about and experience that for themselves. If they have had injuries, if they have mobility challenges, maybe this will be something for them to take a look at and experience something different in their body, which I feel would be a very empowering thing for them.
Yeah, beautiful. Yeah, thank you. As you were sharing that, Petra, I wanted to share one kind of important point, and that is we want to welcome the sensation, as we talked about before, but we welcome all the thoughts, all the feelings, all the emotions. We bring our stuff to the practice and we dissolve it, we give it up, and we start to work through it. So there's oftentimes this feeling that I have to already be flexible or already be happy and carefree to do yoga. No, you bring all the barriers to those things that you want to the practice. And that's where we just start to welcome them and look at them from a place of peace that really starts to make changes that result in very positive outcomes.
It sounds a lot more that this will meet people exactly where they're at instead of having to come to some level. They actually can bring exactly who they are and start from exactly that point forward. So, yeah, sounds beautiful. And thank you, Jeff, for sharing your journey about Avita Yoga and your book. And again, we will be linking to all of that in the show notes. Listeners, if you have any questions, please reach out to me, reach out to Jeff if you have questions about Avita Yoga. And of course, if you try out some classes, let me know how that went for you. Let me know about your experiences. I'm always very curious when our listeners connect up with our guests, and there's a certain kind of magic that happens. So please let us know, comment on our Instagram or hit me up in our messages. We'd love to hear from you. And Jeff, thank you so much for sharing. Thank you so much for connecting us with Avita Yoga. I truly appreciate this wisdom that you have brought over this journey that you've had with yoga for yourself. And thank you so much for being here today.
Yeah, thank you, Petra. What a gift. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks for the beautiful work that you do. Take care, Jeff.
Okay. Namaste.
Thank you so much for taking time out of your day to listen in. If you enjoy the Jōrni Podcast, please support us by subscribing, sharing on social media, and leaving us a review. We appreciate you. And you can find more of The Jōrni on Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, and our website, thejorni.com. Sending you love and courage, and see you next time.